Hi, it's Nick from the Run Testers, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the Adidas Adios 6 and the Adidas Boston 10. So the Adios and the Boston are kind of two of Adidas's long-running, very popular lines of shoes. Obviously, they used to be the kind of top-flight racing shoes in the lineup, and they made great use of Adidas's Boost foam when it was the hot new thing on the block. But of late, they've maybe fallen behind some of the kind of slightly more modern shoes, fast trainers, and kind of super shoes with carbon plates, or training shoes that have some kind of plate or a super foam in them. So they've had a very big refresh for the latest editions of the shoes, becoming much bigger, bulkier shoes with kind of some of Adidas's new tech and foams in them. The Adios is the cheaper of the pair. It's £110 in the UK or $120 in the US, whereas the Boston comes in at £130 in the UK or $140 in the US. You see from the size that the Boston is the heavier shoe. It just sneaks under 300 grams in my UK size 9. It weighs 296 grams, which is 10.4 ounces, whereas the Adios is 246 grams or 8.6 ounces. Now, the stack has been beefed up on both shoes, and in the case of the Boston, it's gone kind of right up to 39.5 millimeters, close to the legal limit for shoes, and it's got an 8.5 millimeter drop, whereas the Adios is now a 27 millimeter stack at the heel, and it's got an 8 millimeter drop. So the Boston's the shoe that's probably had the most changes compared to previous editions. It starts with the upper, which is now quite a complicated affair. It's kind of a dual layer upper. You've got this kind of overlay of mesh and then a kind of booty underneath. That does create a very nice secure fit, but it's a lot going on, and there's kind of extra sections built up around the toe box, and yeah, it's an upper with a lot going on. That includes a nice amount of padding around the heel, and then not that much on the tongue, so they've still kind of kept it fairly stripped back there, but everything else is quite built up and really speaks to this more as a training shoe these days than as a kind of racing option. The midsole's got a whole lot going on as well. You've got a Light Strike Pro layer of foam on the top there, which is Adidas's top foam, the stuff in the kind of Adios Pro 2 racing shoes and the Takumi Sen racing shoes. You also have a carbon plate near the heel for extra stability. And then Adidas's energy rods under the forefoot. You see them there. They are described as anatomically designed carbon technology, right, as opposed to the carbon-infused rods in the Adios Pro 2. But yeah, they're pretty stiff still, and you get a nice bit of snap from them when you're running. Underneath the Light Strike Pro, you have Light Strike EVA, which is, it's fair to say, a much maligned foam from Adidas. It's an EVA foam. It's quite firm, but it's lightweight, it's durable, makes the shoe a bit more stable. It certainly has its uses, and it's been used a lot in the Boston to kind of create that stack height. Then on the bottom of the shoe, you have a nice Continental rubber outsole, great grip, good durability, all those good things. Now for the Adios non-Pro edition, has got the same two foams in the midsole, but in a kind of different configuration. So you've got Light Strike EVA at the heel, and although it looks like it extends underneath the Light Strike Pro on the forefoot as well, it actually doesn't. It kind of just creates a kind of ring of foam around the shoe, because the Light Strike Pro runs all the way through the forefoot. You can see it on the bottom there. That is Light Strike Pro on squidging. You can tell because it's so much squidgier and softer than this kind of EVA foam at the back, which, like I say, is firmer, good for stability and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, it's a much less exciting foam than the Light Strike Pro under the forefoot. You've also got a much more stripped back upper compared to the Boston. It's a single layer mesh. There is some decent cushioning around the heel, but everything else is really pared back and lightweight, keeping this under 250 grams in my size, speaking to it more as the kind of faster option compared to the Boston. And then it hasn't got the energy rods in the midsole, but you do have kind of Adidas's torsion system, like a shank that runs from quite a long way back and then under, kind of forks under the forefoot of the shoe to create a snappy transition. And then, like the Boston, you've got a nice layer of Continental rubber, which is great for grip, great for durability. No problems at all with a Continental rubber outsole. So in the past, both of these shoes were known for kind of very tight, narrow fits, and that's still kind of true of the Adios. It's a kind of fit I really like. I have a narrow foot, so I really have got on very well with both these shoes. They have both been true to size, but I'd say the Boston is certainly a more ample, roomy shoe. It'll be true to size for most people, I would say, whereas the Adios 6, if you have got quite a wide foot, it might be a little bit more of a struggle. But yeah, I found both of them were very comfortable, true to size. So I've had the Boston for the longer of the two shoes, and I've gone over 120k in it now, and it's kind of improved as time has gone on. I certainly feel from about the 50k mark, the shoe broke in a fair bit, and the ride's starting to liven up a little bit, because it was quite dead and firm at the start. I will say it's still quite a firm shoe. That's part of the appeal with this version of the Boston. It is a big high stack shoe, but it's certainly firmer than many of the high stack options out there, and it really helps you kind of cruise through a lot of mileage, and it's showing no signs of wear and tear. It's really built to last, and it is still quite versatile. So I've taken it down the track doing a kind of ladder session of 400, 800, 1200 a mile. And it's got a fair bit of pace in there, despite the kind of heft you're looking at here. I don't think it's a great out-and-out speedwork shoe, but it will tick off tempo runs quite nicely. What I did really like it was for long runs. I did a 20-miler in the shoe and was just ticking along at a good pace, feeling quite fresh and effortless. I do like the ride you get from the energy rods, and I think the shoe's got quite a nice transition from heel to toe. As a heel striker, it's not extremely fluid like a lot of the shoes with rollers and rockers you get these days, like the Endorphin Speed or something like the Skechers Razor Excess, but it's not really clumpy either. It was a little bit at the start, but once it was broken in, I felt like I had quite a nice transition, and I ticked through a 20-miler very comfortably in it and was really impressed actually by the end. So I think it's a really solid cruiser of a shoe. Which Adios 6, I think, is built more for speed work. Like early on in my testing of it, I did enjoy using it for quite a lot of training, just easy runs and stuff. But once I was in a slightly harder training block with a bit more mileage, found that it just beat my legs up a little bit much to use kind of every day. However, you can use it quite a lot, and it's certainly great for your speed work. It's definitely a faster shoe than the Boston. I took this down the track for a kind of a short session, doing a mile, and then some 300 meter and 200 meter reps, and it does really perform very well. Like I said in the review, I almost struggle with the idea that a shoe that feels quite traditional and normal like this can be so fast. I'm so used to using super foams and rollers and plates and all that this shoe, which feels perfectly normal, but you're still running quick in it because it's a quick shoe with a nice snappy transition from that kind of underfoot shank you have there. So I also did some kind of harder long runs in the shoe, including a progression hour. I finished the last section at kind of 5:30 per mile pace, and also it's really no struggle to hit your paces in the shoe. It's a fast shoe. It's a shoe I liked for short, sharp sessions in particular, and I think it would be a good short distance racing shoe. Just my only concern with it would be over kind of longer race distances. It probably beats the leg up a bit more than a lot of shoes out there, including the Boston, which I did find keep me very fresh on those kind of longer runs. You could look at this as a shoe that's going to be a lot more enjoyable for midfoot and forefoot strikers because you're going straight onto that Light Strike Pro foam, which is a lot nicer than the Light Strike EVA. But like I say, I heel strike, and I still really quite liked the ride of the shoe. You get that dual density feeling of the kind of cushioned, stable landing here. This does absorb a fair bit of the impact, and it is a stable landing. And then you very quickly transition onto that soft foam and get that nice kind of explosive toe off from that. Because of this kind of, like I say, this shank system, which does create a very snappy ride rather than the very smooth cruisery ride, which I got a bit more from the Boston. This is snappy, fast, gets you on your toes, gets you moving quick, but it's a little bit more unforgiving, which you would expect from the kind of slightly more racier shoe of the pair. So yeah, I would say the Boston, has probably got a slightly more forgiving ride that you can use for everything, especially if you are someone looking at kind of those longer runs, those marathon training runs. It's going to deal with those really well. Just a bit firmer, a bit more kind of snappy. Could be a very versatile option for someone who likes that kind of firmer ride, but for myself, I would say this more for kind of that fast training. So, supposed to say these are both very interesting updates from Adidas, and it was really the Boston that Adidas chose to give probably more of its new tech. You've got a lot of the new foam in there, you've got those energy rods, a little carbon plate at the heel and everything like that, and they obviously completely redesigned the upper. A lot of people haven't liked the update, it's fair to say. I did warm to the shoe quite a lot. It's still a shoe I quite like just using from time to time. I bring it out, and I like going away somewhere with this shoe because it is quite versatile. I think it's like a good looking shoe. I like wearing it around town as well, and I think it's going to last forever, essentially. So I wouldn't write it off, and I think if you're someone who only uses one shoe in your kind of lineup, and you are generally looking at kind of longer distances, do quite a lot of miles in training, then the Boston would be the shoe I'd pick of the pair. It is a bit more comfortable to use for those kind of longer runs, and I do think it's it's a shoe that will be protecting the legs a bit better than the Adios does. This is more of a classic fast trainer and racing shoe, the kind of thing that would work best in a rotation with an easier option. If I was getting the shoe, I'd also want a full kind of carbon or energy rod racing shoe in my lineup. So I would pair this with something like the Adios Pro 2 or the Vaporfly. Use this for fast training, tempo training, and then get a nice cushy, easy option to use for kind of base training miles just to help the legs to recover. But if you're someone who's maybe doing a little bit less distance, focusing on shorter races, just really likes a firm feel, never finds that have problem with that beating up their legs, this can work as for everything really, because it's still got a fairly built up cushioned ride there, and it does remind me of the kind of old Bostons, whereas this feels like something very different. Yeah, I'd say overall I was probably more impressed by the Adios 6 from the off, and I think it's a shoe that probably makes more sense for people to work within a rotation, but have warms to the Boston 10 quite a lot, and I do like it. Just again, it just fits my use case probably a little bit better, because when I do turn to those fast training sessions, a lot of people will just use their carbon racing shoe, or I would prefer to use something that has probably a smoother ride like the Endorphin Speed. But this is still a very good fast training shoe, and it's really good value as well. That's the other thing to talk about here, I suppose. It comes in a fair bit cheaper than the Boston, which does make it easier to slip it into a rotation when you're also buying other shoes. Whereas the Boston, I think, sometimes can be hard to find a place for in a rotation, because I think they're probably more comfortable shoes for easy runs, and they're certainly faster shoes, more versatile shoes, including this and the Endorphin Speed and all those that are more impressive for fast training, while actually also being pretty much just as good for kind of long and easy stuff. So yeah, that's probably how I'd end up framing it. This is not a terrible shoe, but it's probably a little bit outgunned on all fronts by other options, whereas the Adios 6 does stand up as a very good fast training option that's got a different ride to a lot of the options out on the market elsewhere, whilst also being really good value at just over £100. So guys, that's a comparison of the Adidas Boston 10 and the Adidas Adios 6. What do you think of these shoes? Are you big long-term fans of the Adios and Boston lines? What do you think about this very considerable update on the Boston, and even what they did to the Adios 6 to kind of change it from what it was in the past? Please let us know in the comments. Please like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.